You're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, Benny Golson, his life and times and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about some of his best compositions of all time. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. Along Came Betty was released in 1958. Benny Golson was inspired to write it after dating a woman called Betty. The song was originally played out as a saxophone, guitar and piano instrumental. Lyrics were later added by John Hendricks. The song is a hard bop song which incorporates the rhythms of bebop and the soulful elements of the blues. Five Spot After Dark was released in 1959. This song was inspired by the Five Spot, a famous jazz haunt in New York. The arena was famous for its raw and invigorating jazz performances after hours. This one's a great swing song. And Are You Real released in 1965. This one's a unique tune. One feature of this song is it asks a question with every note. The song plays out like a musical dialogue between two musicians. So this song addresses several themes about the complexities of love, trust, insecurity, commitment and so forth. And that was a quick recap of what's coming up during this hour, and you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, Benny Golson, his life and times and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about more of his best compositions of all time. The first one's called Along Came Betty, released in 1958. Benny Golson wrote this song while he was performing alongside the Jazz Messengers with Art Blakey. He was inspired to write it after dating a woman called Betty. The song was originally played out as a saxophone, guitar and piano instrumental. Lyrics were added in later years by John Hendricks. The song was featured on an album called Morning, featuring several other compositions like Blues March and Are You Real. The song is very innovative in terms of melody and harmony. The song is a hard bop song which incorporates the rhythms of bebop and the soulful elements of the blues. The song's meaning is twofold. It can be taken in the literal sense to mean a woman called Betty who comes along and lights up the singer's life, or in a symbolic way to denote an event that happens out of the blue that brings joy and great tidings. The song is also a favorite with musicians who love to improvise. The song is sung by a singer who starts off wondering who Betty is, and then dwells on her beauty and the fact that she came along and everything became okay. Five Spot After Dark was released in 1959. This song was inspired by the Five Spot, a famous jazz haunt in New York City. The arena was famous for its raw and invigorating jazz performances after hours. The phrase after dark refers to that freedom, a sense of relaxation where jazz musicians could express themselves with more freedom and creativity. This one's a very improvisation-based song, like many of the jam sessions conducted in the Five Spot. It's also a great swing song. And Are You Real released in 1965. This one's a unique tune. One feature of this song is it asks a question with every note. The song plays out like a musical dialogue between two musicians. On the original version released on the album Morning, we see Curtis Fuller and Benny Golson on solos. Each performance, a call and response that plays out like a musical conversation. This is another song that Golson wrote in memory of Clifford Brown. The song is styled after Clifford's style of playing. Critics have speculated that the title has a philosophical bent, a very swinging hard bop song. So this one's a beautiful love song where the singer is singing about his partner's beauty and his love for her, and yet he's also plagued by doubts about her faithfulness. So this song addresses several themes about the complexities of love, trust, insecurity, commitment and so forth. The singer is both enthralled and encumbered by his romance. So that was some insight into more of Benny Golson's best compositions of all time, and this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, Benny Golson, his biography and best compositions. Now some trending album news. There's a new album called Song from composers Bradley Parker Sparrow and Giovanni Paletto. The tracks feature piano and voice tours from the musicians. The songs are all about intimacy, reflection and improvisation. There's a variety of music from gentle, relaxing songs to swinging grooves to improvised singing and expansive piano solos. Some of the songs from the album include Jim DeJong, Sparrow's solo, Tomorrow, Cottage Grove and more. Giovanni Paletto has a very stirring emotional style of delivery and she brings her mesmerizing vocals to this compilation of songs. Also, Sparrow has a unique innovative style on piano. He's carved a niche for himself as one of Chicago's leading pianists. The album's song is set for release on April 25th this year. For more information, please visit www.chicagosound.com. So that was some trending music news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about more of Benny Golson's best compositions of all time. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, Benny Golson, his life and times and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about more of his best compositions of all time. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. The first one's called Park Avenue Petite. This one's a beautiful jazz ballad composed by Golson. The song is centered around the story of a woman living in one of Park Avenue's apartments and her love affair with the doorman of that apartment. I Remember Clifford was released in 1957. Benny Golson wrote this song in 1965 as a tribute to his friend and mentor Clifford Brown. Clifford was a rising star and acclaimed jazz trumpeter who was killed in a car accident at the age of 25. Golson said he wrote the song to represent everything about the playing style of Clifford Brown. The lyrics talk about how he will never be forgotten and his music will always endure. Another composition called Out of the Past. This song was first composed by Golson and Jon Hendricks in 1958. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashani Silva. On this week's episode, Benny Golson, his life and times and best compositions. During this hour, we're going to be talking about more of his best compositions of all time. The first one's called Park Avenue Petite. This one's a beautiful jazz ballad composed by Golson. The origins of the title of this composition was for a long time unknown. Many people wondered about it until one day Golson revealed the story. The song was written in the late 1950s. Golson said the song stemmed from his imagination. He thought of a picture of a single woman living in one of Park Avenue's apartments. There's a doorman in that apartment, and every day this woman passes him on the way to that apartment. And he has feelings for her, but he's never able to tell her of his love for her because of their difference in social status. So this song is themed around his sadness and despondency as he goes from day to day seeing her and being unable to reach out. I Remember Clifford was released in 1957. Benny Golson wrote this song in 1965 as a tribute to his friend and mentor Clifford Brown. Clifford was a rising star and acclaimed jazz trumpeter who was killed in an automobile accident at the age of 25. Benny Golson painted a vivid picture of the day he found out. He'd been playing at a gig in Harlem alongside Dizzy Gillespie, and then the sad news broke that Clifford Brown had died. Everybody was frozen in disbelief because Clifford Brown had been one of their closest friends. The next day, Gillespie's band was scheduled to perform in Los Angeles, and Golson came up with a song to commemorate the legacy of Clifford Brown. However, the song wasn't published until 1957. Golson said he wrote the song to represent everything about the playing style of Clifford Brown. The song was originally instrumental, lyrics were added in later years. The lyrics talk about how he will never be forgotten and his music will always endure. The song ends with a testimonial to the lasting impact he had on jazz musicians in the years to come. And a composition called Out of the Past. This song was first composed by Golson and Jon Hendricks in 1958. Golson said he wanted this song to feel like something out of the past, like a black and white film scene. He wanted it to feel nostalgic and heartwarming. This was another great song about how the singer meets a person who changes their life. The story takes place with the singer remembering bygone times. He's reminiscing about a person from the past, and then suddenly that old love appears in his life for real and changes his future. Some of the themes from the song: nostalgia, destiny. The singer is looking back on cherished moments and finding new meaning in the future. According to some critics, this song also refers to a second chance at love, the potential for past love to be rekindled. And you're tuned to the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashani Silva. On this week's episode, Benny Golson, his life and times and best hits. We've come to an end of this week's episode of the Jazz Update, so now let's recap what we were discussing during this program. Benny Golson was a leading saxophonist and composer from the Hall of Fame of Jazz. He wrote several compositions that have become classics today, from Stablemates to Blues March to Park Avenue Blues and more. Golson hailed from Philadelphia. In high school, he played with several other musicians like John Coltrane, Jimmy Hart, Philly Joe Jones and Red Rodney. During the 50s, Golson toured and performed alongside the bands of Lionel Hampton, Earl Bostic, Dizzy Gillespie and Art Blakey. In 1995, Golson was awarded the NEA Jazz Masters Award from the National Endowment of the Arts. So that was a quick insight into his biography. Now let's talk about some of his best compositions of all time. The first one's called Stablemates, released in 1955. This song was composed when Golson was touring and performing in clubs in Massachusetts. One of his favorite haunts was a jazz club called The Stable in a Boston restaurant. Golson wrote this song for one of those performances and named it after that restaurant, The Stable. It was one of Golson's earliest compositions and put him on the map as a leading jazz composer of his time. Blues March was released in 1958. Golson was inspired to compose this song from the marching bands of New Orleans. For many years, this song was the theme song for the Jazz Messengers, one of their most popular hits. The instrumentals blend blues rhythms with military cadences. It's a great song from the hard bop genre. And Five Spot After Dark, released in 1959. This song was inspired from the Five Spot, a famous jazz haunt in New York City. The arena was famous for its raw and invigorating jazz performances after hours. This one's a great swing song. So that was a quick insight into the life and times and best compositions of Benny Golson, and this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashani Silva. Don't forget you can check out the archives of today's program on my YouTube channel, the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan. So on that note, we've come to an end of this week's episode of the Jazz Update. I'll see you again next week. Have a great week ahead.